Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Dor.
Let's try that again. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the first Wednesday series. It's very good to see you all.
All of you.
All of you.
All of you.
All of you. And it's very good to see you all as well. So, before starting, because this is a weak point for me, I would like to start by thanking Poetry Ireland for sponsoring tonight. And so now that that's out of the way and I haven't forgotten it, let me just start by introducing Eoin. Professor Eoin Devereux is a member of faculty in UL. He teaches the creative writing, let me not mess this up. He teaches on the MA in creative writing program, specializing in community engagement, and teaches the creative writers in the community module. He's a DJ and experimental musician and has collaborated with Gavin Friday on a radio series for the U2 radio station U2X. A distinguished poet, Eoin's work has appeared in leading national and international journals and publications, including the Irish Times, Janus Literary Magazine, the Stony Thursday book, one of the founders of which is here with us tonight, and Southwards. His work has been published by Poetry Ireland and broadcast by RTE's poetry program and Sunday Miscellany. And his poem Pravda was shortlisted for the 2024 Post Irish Book Awards New Poetry category. Now, to all of those who know Eoin and his work, you know we're in for a treat tonight. And for those who don't know it yet, you're in for a treat tonight. So, join me in giving Eoin a very, very warm welcome.
No pressure. It's wonderful to see so many people here this evening. So many faces that I'm familiar with and some new people as well. And I particularly would like to welcome my friend John Liddy and his wife Pilar, who have come all the way from Madrid via Rathban, my stomping ground, this evening. So John, you're really very welcome. It's fantastic to see you here. So I'm going to read a selection of poems, and I was trying to shape the reading in my head during the week, and I figured I'd start in quite a personal way in terms of looking at, I write about class, I write about being from a working class background a lot, so I'm going to start really where I began life in Limerick City, and then I'm going to read some poems about some of the people over the years that I've been particularly taken with in Limerick City. Then I'll broaden out a bit, and then I suppose I'll hopefully end on a more, of course everything is political, all language, all words, all poems are political, but I will end up, I think, with some new political poems at the end. And I'm honoured to be invited to read this evening. So the first poem is a poem called The Bull Field. And I grew up in what used to be called, I suppose, a corporation estate off the Roxborough Road in Limerick called Kennedy Park. And before it was Kennedy Park, it was known locally as the Bull Field. The Bull Field. On All Souls' Day, I knelt down on the mottled tundra clay. Ear cupped to the frozen ground, I could faintly hear the murmurings of men buried nameless in the pauper's grave. Simple men like Francie Murphy and Brendan Plunkett, let out for the day to belly crawl over damp drills, hand-picking potatoes, greyhound cabbage, carrots, turnips, mangels. It takes a lot of work to feed hospital. In the Bullfield, I see Matty Keane and Pa O'Brien, able-bodied innocents, chopping wood or ricking turf, thrown the odd players or woodbine as payment for their toil. In the Bullfield, I see tormented men like Jim Sullivan and Dinny Ryan, fattening pigs with sour milk and potato skins, slopping out greeny brown scutter from their pens. I see them all, and somehow cannot deny them. Men who were dumped in silence at first light from the back of a blue Ford tractor, exchanging their labour for bed and board in the madhouse named after the patron saint of workers. A favourite term of my late mother, Eoin Devereux Kennedy. She was a sister of Seamus O'Coneta, the poet, historian and writer. Very fortunate to have such a wonderful uncle. I was thinking about him during the week. Pat Inglesby died on Sunday, and I often saw parallels in my own life between having my uncle Seamus and Pat Inglesby, who was a fantastic poet and zany individual. A particular phrase my mother used to use a lot was the term or phrase penny boy. Don't mind him, he's just a penny boy. So here's a poem called Penny Boy. At first, my untutored lazy eye didn't even register the many clues scattered all over the greasy streets of this pig town. From the wrong side of the tracks, we were shunted from the very start. Our final destinations preordained by Christian brothers who routed us to trades, labouring or the boat. Classes called after saints, harbingers of our final destinations. Patricks, Gerards, Nessons, Kevins, Malachys, Senons. It was Big Jim and Johnny Rotten who helped me unpick the code. My class honoured the patron saint of the falsely accused. But that didn't stop the dandruff and chalk-flecked teachers promising to follow our careers through ankle, or better still, the courts. There were further hints beyond the high walls of the school. Fragrant Laurel Hill girls, the well-turned-out daughters of the new moneyed, who wouldn't dream of telling their mothers precisely where we hailed from. Or the mohair-suited manager who turned down my softly spoken job application to work as a penny boy in the Harrods of Limerick, saying they couldn't have the likes of me knocking around the finest emporium in town. And for all the guff about doctors and dockers singing from the same hymn sheet, the great and the decent indelibly marked us like the children of Cain. The stain placed upon us was far deeper than an Indian ink dot. We were forever judged by estate, by street and accent. So last year I began to write quite a number of poems last year about a man called Sean Burke. And Sean Burke famously sprang the Russian spy George Blake in 1967. He went to Moscow and Berlin, and he ended up coming back to Limerick and lived, kind of shambolic life in some respects. He spent about the equivalent of €1 million in today's money in terms of the royalties that he earned on his book, The Springing of George Blake. And Sean Burke is a really interesting figure. He drank in this very bar, like some of the other people I will read about this evening. So this is a poem about Sean Burke, one of two, called Pravda, which of course is the Russian for truth. I should tell you that Sean Burke's cousin was Desmond O'Grady, the poet, of course, another person long associated with readings here in the White House. Pravda, in memory of Sean Burke. My cousin Desmond, a versifier, worked for Ezra Pound. My uncle Feathery, a rich miser, gave pennies for scrap in tumble-down Limerick town. I served my time as a banana stealer, a bomb maker, a jailbreaker, a scribbler. I taught myself in Wormwood scrubs. I forgot myself in Moscow pubs. Seduced by whiskey, repulsed by poverty, I was a reluctant guest of the KGB. The hard lessons I learned came not from Christian Brothers nor Dangan Industrial School, and I realised a long time ago that Richard Lovelace was no fool. Stone walls do not corral, cages do not contain. The chains that constrain us most of all often spring from within. Sean Burke decamped to Kilkee. He went on the dry and he said, writing a sequel to his book, The Springing of George Blake. And he died in what some people still see and describe as mysterious circumstances. His caravan near the Percy French estate, when it was examined, he had a manuscript, clearly people witnessed him writing a manuscript, but there was no manuscript there, and neither for the small amount of money that Sean Burke had was that stolen, in terms of what happened to him. And there is a suggestion, and it's been written about in a number of books, about the possibility that the KGB may have been involved in his demise, but there's a debate about that. So Sean Burke, as I say, moved to Kilkee, and this is a poem about his time in Kilkee. It's called At New Found Out. No words flow. I borrow a nut-brown mongrel and tramp around this seaside town, killing thoughts, killing time. Later, dog-tired in my wind-whipped tin caravan, perched at the edge of the Percy French estate, I raise my glass and offer its dregs to honour Che Guevara, Charlotte Bronte and Alfred Lord Tennyson, scribblers like me who came here to take the waters, fill their notebooks and savour the sea air. So one of the people mentioned in the first poem, The Bull Field, and I should have said, but one of my memories of walking up and down the Roxborough Road when I was a child going to school in Sexton Street. A piece that John Shinners has painted a lot. John Liddy has written about that geography a lot as well. The image of men from the psychiatric hospital being taken out of the hospital to work as free labour to feed the hospital. And this is an image that stayed with me as I began to write about that area. One of the men in that poem is a man called Francie Murphy. And this is a poem from the Stony Thursday book from a number of years ago, which gives a bit more of a background to Francie Murphy's life. Early spring butter palmed, Francie Murphy, aged 54, breaks solid ground. Using his father's gravel-sharpened spade, he slices sods, loam, heavy clay. Just 8 inches down, he unearths the scraggy remains of an angry young man in a hurry. Midsummer, green-kneed Francie Murphy culls bottled blonde scotchgrass, rhubarb dock leaves, blow-in weeds, foot-tall electric nettles, bottle green rushes, dandelions, ragworth, nodding thistles. In the luxuriant lazy beds, egged on by the rotting fronds of spring-tide seaweed, Francie Murphy plays God, choosing which leggy seedlings to kill with his bare-knuckled hands. Late autumn, stout-bellied from his marriage to porter, Francie Murphy wears his mother's size 7 rushers, taking treacle steps over 19 and a half damp acres, small fields reclaimed by his father's father, each of them named as you would a newly baptized child. He plucks the dregs of blackberries, haws and hazelnuts from brazen hedges, already hoary with mildew, frost and puka spit. In the grey light of the hardest of winters, just 3 weeks short from reaching half a century plus 5, Francie Murphy stands by the oxblood barn door. A cincture of rope secures his 3 coats as he stews on the bones of his life with no one but a mongrel bitch for company. Most of the time, if you write poetry, and many people here are poets, if you write poetry, you have to work very hard at your craft, and and you write and you rewrite and you tear up and you tear your hair out, and the best advice is to put the poem in the bottom drawer and come back in 6 months' time and so on. And the odd time, Christopher Flynn, if he were alive, he would say it's the Holy Spirit, I'm not sure, but the odd time a poem appears in your head, you write it and you end up doing very little with it, and it's something that intrigues me in terms of why that actually might happen. I was at a sound check in Dolan's warehouse down the road. I was DJing with a David Bowie tribute band, and this poem came to me. It's called The Bodhi Tree. We weren't that surprised when Paddy Brazel pointed it out to us, for he had a weather eye for such things. a hazel tree sprouting in the left-hand corner of our trim suburban tablecloth garden. And for all our weeding and trimming, spraying and mowing, we'd never noticed it. Paddy knew how to read clouds, why a clamour of rooks would swoop in the evening air, when there'd be hard winter, where the best wild mushrooms were. He minded our tree as if it were his own. In early spring he heralded its new catkins. In summer he peered through the green cloaked branches to see if the house sparrows had fashioned a home. In autumn he harvested its tanned fruits, one by one. He knew that we just live once, that there is no such thing as heaven, that we all return to the earth to begin the cycle again. My mother, I mentioned my mother, who was the sister of Seamus O'Canadian. My mother, at one stage, she worked as a bookbinder's assistant across the road here in the Limerick Leader. And one of the memories I have from my childhood was that on Monday morning, my mother would write to her best friend, Rita Murphy was her name, and she was a migrant, she lived in Birmingham. My mother would roll up the Limerick Leader, the weekend edition of the Leader, and she would write a letter and secrete the letter inside the newspaper and parcel it off and post it there at the top of William Street in the post office. And off it went to her friend Rita, and Rita would send back the gossip and who saw who and all the rest of it. So this is a poem, a short poem called A Letter from the Heart. It's about to appear in it's the 2024 Stony Thursday, which hasn't been launched yet, but that's another story. So this is a letter from the heart. Every Monday, before the porridge pot was scrubbed and toast crumbs brushed away, the city edition was ironed, rolled and entombed in a sheet of brown paper, addressed in finest copper plate, entwined with a butcher's knot. The squat parcel was sealed with a red wax clot. An SAG implored a safe passage from postbox to mailboat and night train. The plea to the patron saint of lost things was not for the tightly wrapped bundle, but for the safe delivery of the epistle secreted within. I'm going to finish with two short poems. And again, neither have, I haven't read either of them before. So many of you will know about Magdalen Laundries and the Good Shepherd in Limerick and the ways in which women were incarcerated and so on in many places across Ireland. This poem is called The Long Can, and if you're from Limerick you may be familiar that the area where the Lancastrian House of Industry, where the Good Shepherd was, locally the term Long Can was used to describe that street. So this is the Long Can. The headlines were silent on the crimes of the rich, mute on employers who underpaid. No ink was used to tell about the girls who scrub shit from sheets and smalls, or the older women enslaved to handcraft gossamer lace. Jailed behind the walls of the Long Can, their only crimes being poor or being a source of temptation. So, I get sometimes, he's a very political poet, and I don't ever apologise for that. And I'm going to finish with a short poem, which is kind of a rant really. It's called Hidden Injuries, and it kind of brings me back full circle to what I was talking about at the very, very start, which is about class, and particularly about class discrimination. Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, the Labour Party, entrepreneurs, risk takers, captains of industry, the squeezed middle, and Jesus Christ, worse still, expert working groups, consultants, golf players, auctioneers, property developers, middle managers, green jersey wearers, drivers of our small open economy. Never refer to the C word. Never ever refer to the hidden injuries of class. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eoin, for that reading. Let's give him another round. take a 5-minute, and when I say 5-minute, I mean 5-minute because the list is long. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Well, then I'll come and get it then.
And then we're going to come back and start the open mic. Now, after we come back, this clipboard will be going around for you to write little messages, thank yous, favorite moments.